When me and my wife started our company, All Things New, we started with minimal gear. Just to give a little backdrop on myself, I grew up in a poverty setting, surviving 2 house fires, the second one taking everything. I remember my first day of high school. I had this Adidas sweater and sweatpants that I wore to school and class, and I wore that for weeks until we can get new clothes, because we lost everything in our fire when I was in 8th grade. It was around 8th grade summer. And you see, with that, going through high school with its own challenges, and then from there, my parents not having the financial backing to set me up for the next stage, I had to work really hard and hustle to take myself to another level of survival in this world of getting a career job, and try to do that through sports in college, and had its own financial challenges in there, and joined the Navy. It felt like it was the last resort, did my tour there, and ended up being blessed with the opportunity to be stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. And I met my wife literally months after landing here, and now after 20 something years, she has her own backstory of having her family being homeless. They were living on the beach, which sounds like a vacation, but trust me, it's not. And both of us meeting each other and starting our lives together with now 4 kids, and our kids having grandkids. It's just been a crazy journey, but amazing journey. And that backdrop I share to say, when we were in a position where I lost my job based on availability of projects and things when I was working with the construction company, and she was working 2 jobs at a time. I was starting to do side jobs and trying to pick up work here and there. There was like no resources to our availability. We were living paycheck by paycheck, barely paying our rent, trying to feed the kids whatever we could with easy make dinners at home, and we're living in a very low income neighborhood and just trying to survive, and with these side jobs, and with my wife working I think it was 2 jobs at the time. There was a lot of weight and challenges just within that of itself. So during that season, the side jobs that we were picking up, there was some momentum and fruit happening, and we prayed and went through, couple weeks, and almost a month of prayer and seeking, and God had given us this burden for this industry of residential construction, and we got confirmation, and then we launched it. And and it was scary. It was like Peter, stepping off the boat, probably, just focused so much on what Jesus' words were saying, come, that when he did step off, he didn't recognize what was actually he was stepping into, and he didn't have any gear. He had minimal gear. And that is really how we started our company. You would look at it from a outside view and look in and say, wait a minute, you guys don't have the cash flow or funding. You don't have, the knowledge of how to financially run a business. Have you even run a business before? And when you look at all these elements of, were we checking the boxes of what should be checked to start a business, you would say that, and recommend probably, that we shouldn't start a business with everything going on, the bills we have paid, the 4 kids, the where we're living, having 0 resources. But God made a way. When God says, come, just like he said to Peter, it's our responsibility and stewardship to trust and have faith that when we step off the boat, our feet will hit the water but will not sink. And so my experience through this is that when we started climbing the mountain with 0 gear, we trusted that God was our spotter. See, when I was a young kid, I loved climbing. I loved it. Like, I was a busy bee, man. I would just run around. My daughter, my youngest daughter, reality, she's the same thing. We actually nicknamed her Busy Bee, and that blood runs through me, man. I was constantly running around, climbing things and trying to get to the top to get a better view, maybe. I don't know. I was young. But I used to climb things. There was a time where I was in the bank with my mother, and she was cashing a check or doing whatever transaction she was doing at the bank counter, and the teller behind the bank was like, "Is that your son?" And then there I was, about 10 feet up, climbing a rock stone accent wall in the back end of the bank, and I was pretty close to the top. They had to bring some people and bring me down. There's another very significant situation where I think I was about 6 years old. My father loved climbing. He had different hobbies, but climbing was one of his favorite. He would and his friends would go to a mountain when we were living in California, and they would find a good spot, secure their anchors at the top, run their ropes down, go to the very bottom, and safely climb the mountain knowing that they were secure. And they would climb the mountain, find different spots. You've seen this stuff probably on YouTube. It's real, and used to happen many times. He was not an extreme rock climber, but he did climb walls up to about 100 feet would be about my guess. And here I am. You know, he brought me along. I don't know if my mom was with me during the situation or who was watching us below, but here I go on my little climbing, exploring expeditions, and started climbing. And I believe I got about halfway up. Can you imagine a 6-year-old 50 feet on a vertical rock wall, just climbing? And I was climbing with excitement, kind of getting the sense of the view that they were getting, and I was doing very well. But what was the key thing here? I didn't have any gear. I didn't have anything. And when I recognized that, like Peter, I looked down and I just started out of fear crying and crying. And my father heard that cry. And even though he was with the momentum of going up, not knowing that I was climbing, he came down like Spider-Man, swooped me up, grabbed me, got me down safely, just like that. But that experience, it injected something into me to have this component of fearlessness, knowing that I can climb and I can have my father save me. And the key component here is that, you know, I would never go encourage any 6-year-old to go climb a mountain, vertical rock wall at 50 feet high with minimal gear. But what I am saying here is that when you start climbing with your father, you can climb with a fearlessness, that knowing he is there to spot you as a spotter. If you want to use that word spotter, think of like sports, you know, or working out. Because when I played football, I had to go to the gym sometimes 2 to 3 times a week as part of our program to get ready. When I played college football, you know, we would push weights past our limits. Like, let's use the bench press for an example. And you would have to have a spotter sometimes too. And so a spotter, and there's different kinds of spotters. There's the ones that kind of just let you carry the weight. There's the ones that actually, you know, come under and try to give you enough support to allow you to lift the weight as much as possible, but then be there to encourage you, but at the same time grab it and put it up. And so that's what God is, the builder of all things. That's what he is for us. He's a spotter. And so when we're going to climb our mountains or step out on the water like Peter, we have to know that the spotter is there, but then we can step out in faith and not fear. And so when we started our business and stepped out, we knew we had the foundation laid first. And the key component and the practicalness of this is the foundation is knowing God is there. Jesus is out in the water. The spotter, my father, he was on the mountain climbing. And so if you're in a place or a position that you're looking to start something new, you feel a burden, you feel a burden from God, or you feel an encouragement from, you know, or a movement of wanting to start this new thing, my recommendation, my encouragement to you is to start it with the right foundation. And how do we do that? When me and Tiffany felt the burden, felt like this, all the dots were connecting and we needed to start this all things new residential construction business, the first thing that we did was recognize that there was a need. So in the market that we were in, specifically residential construction, contractors were taking advantage of homeowners, stealing down payments, scamming, low costs come in, high change orders. There was a need for God to inject himself in this market. So we recognize the need is number one. Number two, we have to make sure God is with us. Just like Moses pleaded to God on the mountain about the Israelites below who are complaining. God told Moses, you can have the Israelites go to the promised land because I spoke a promise. I'm going to give it to you, but you guys are going and I'm not going with you. Moses pleaded, God, if you're not going, I'm not going, because you have to be with us when we go. So this number two component here is make sure God is with you. So recognize the burden from God, the compassion's there. That's the energy and the love and the movement we need from God. And number two is to have God go with you. And number three is that confirmation. Me and Tiffany went into a deep prayer fast, and we needed a clear confirmation that this was the calling from God. Just like Gideon, this is dramatic, but this is what Gideon did. Gideon went through a confirmation level with God to make sure the calling on him was to push forward and to go in the war with the minimal gear that he had. I believe they only had 300 soldiers against thousands of soldiers to go to war. So in order to do that, Gideon had to make sure I got the confirmation to go out there, and he had a confirmation to put for God. So we had positioned ourselves the same way. And so minimal gear, if you think about the stories in the scriptures and the Bibles, Moses had the same position when he was asked in his calling to go back to Egypt to set the Israelites free. He said, God, how am I going to do this? I can't do this. And he went with what? What did he go with? Just a rod. That was it. Minimal gear. David being anointed to be called king and had to go against Goliath. What did he beat Goliath with? What did he take him down? Just a little rock. Minimal gear. You have Joseph, who was taken into his brothers, basically sold him into slavery, taken off to Egypt, and he ended up getting thrown into prison eventually for years. Minimal gear. But what got him out and put him at second command of all Egypt? Just a dream interpretation. That's it. Minimal gear. He didn't have anything else to equip him with. So these stories remind me that God works through minimal gear for him to be glorified. And so when we went into starting our business, we didn't have the funds, we didn't have the knowledge, we didn't have the people, we didn't have these things. But we knew we got the confirmation, we had the burden and compassion, and we knew that God was in this with us. And so when we moved out and we stepped on water, we knew that God would eventually equip us with the gear that we needed as we go along the way. And my experience after 12, 13, now I think we're 14 years into our business, it was actually the best strategic pattern, because as a business owner and going into business and starting to grow, scale, and have all these operations, learning along the way is probably the best method to growing properly in your business. Understanding how to put together Excel sheets and admin operations and processes sounds boring, but when I understand the process and we built it from scratch, everything else is simplified from the top down as we try to navigate, grow, and scale our business.